So I have interviewed over 50 people for the book. They're from all walks of life, from all around the world. They either live, work or have travelled in Africa. I've interviewed people like, there's a gentleman, a vet from America who was named US Magazine, People Magazine's America's Most Sexiest Vet 2 years running, and he also assists in Africa on the front line of some of the most formidable conservation initiatives. He also hosted his own program on, I think it was Animal Planet, and he uses his huge social media presence and following to educate his followers about issues and conservation initiatives around wildlife. So an incredibly fascinating individual, as they all are. Another person I interviewed has hosted several documentaries on Animal Planet. One of those was lived in a glass box in the middle of Las Vegas Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada. So lived in a glass box for 10 days with 100 of the world's most deadliest and most venomous snakes. Fascinating. He's also making huge waves in developing an economical and universal snake antivenom for snake bites. He also assists every year on the annual Discovery Channel's Shark Week show. He's a fascinating individual, just the work he's doing. I also interviewed leaders in wildlife photography, and with that, leaders in photographic safaris. I interviewed a team member from the extreme sports team Nitro Circus, who, while they were on tour in South Africa, they were shot at by poachers, and also this individual, he came face to face with South Africa's fastest striking snake, the black mamba. I have legends in conservation, everything from an ethno-ecologist. If you don't know what an ethno-ecologist is, don't worry, I never did either until I interviewed this gentleman. So you have to read the book to find out what he is, what an ethno-ecologist does. From vets who travel around and respond to emergency wildlife situations, like with snares and traps and poaching and all that sort of stuff. I also, one of those conservationists that I interviewed was the host of a 2-season series called Carter's War, and if you know anything about Africa and conservation in Africa, especially wildlife conservation, you'll know who I'm speaking about, but I'm not going to mention his name today because I'll introduce him in another video. I have, so during that Carter's War, just quickly to touch base about what it was, if you want to look it up to watch it, he takes us on a journey. So Carter's War, I'll tell you a little bit about that. So this legend of a man and a conservationist and host of Carter's War, he takes viewers on a journey to the front lines in Africa, to where human and wildlife conflict is at its greatest, while looking at both sides of the coin as to why these conflicts are happening, and also looking for new and sustainable solutions to such conflict. It's an incredibly fascinating series, so if you want to watch it, do. It's very, very good. I've also interviewed a couple who got married at the Bronx Zoo. So they were from New York City. They got married at the Bronx Zoo, and they spent their honeymoon with gorillas in Rwanda, which is cool. And a female empowerment leader who runs female-only treks in Tanzania. I interviewed a lady who has been to a female-only village in the north of Kenya, and this village is woman-only, no men. It's a place where they can go and live to escape from cultural and traditional practices such as female circumcision, child marriage, sexual assault, all that sort of stuff. It's an escape basically, and somewhere they can go and live where they're safe. I interviewed a German lady who over a decade ago married a Maasai warrior and has ever since lived in his Maasai village in Tanzania. And they've since had a son, and she's also implementing new conservation initiatives to ensure the longevity of the Maasai and their traditions. So that's really, really cool. I've interviewed a food travel blogger, I also interviewed a gentleman from a village in Tanzania whose I have to get this right. Anyway, great uncle was the first guide to lead the first white man up to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. And he passed away at 125, this gentleman, and there's a memorial to him at the Marangu Gate at the base of Kilimanjaro. And this gentleman that I interviewed, he's also a guide on Kilimanjaro, which is extremely cool. So each of these people are sharing, their experiences and their love for the continent, while also, talking practically about their experiences and wildlife encounters and staying safe while traveling in Africa. But there's also, I had a contribution from a Nigerian poet who has contributed several written works of his to the book, and it's all about his upbringing and childhood in Nigeria, which is super special. I've had 2 contributions from travel writers. One is a New Zealand travel writer who almost by accident ended up in Ethiopia, and he spent time hanging out with the hyenas of Hara in Ethiopia. And just the back story to his experience is incredibly fascinating, so keep an eye on that one. The other one is by an IT genius that lives in the UK but was actually born in Nigeria, and he documented one of his trips back to Nigeria, and he travelled around, so he shares his adventures from that, and it's from a very, very real perspective, which is incredibly special. There's also a previously published article of mine. It was published in a UK-based travel magazine, Travel Africa. Plus I share a couple of other small bits about my travels and whatnot, a few written works by me. Another one of our interviewees contributed a travel blog post that she wrote titled Everything You Need to Know Before Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, including an ultimate packing list. So that's super special. I did have 3 latecomers to the book, or late interviews to late editions. To me, they're not late editions because I've been in talks with some of these people since 2017 when I first started, interviewing. Of course, these people are busy, so it's really hard to nail some of these people down for interviews. But I finally managed to get them into the book, which is amazing. One of them is a US Army Green Beret who shares his story about becoming a Green Beret, and also how that led to him going to Africa several times to work in anti-poaching. So incredibly fascinating. The other one is the owner and founder of the largest rhino sanctuary in the world. Incredible lady. She used to be South African police in wildlife crimes. Awesome story. And the other one is a carnivore ecologist who is from America but lives in Africa now, and yeah, that's another incredible story. So each of these individuals that I interviewed, as they tell their story, you can feel their passion for Africa and what they do, and it's expressed through their words and how they tell their story, and you get truly inspired by that, and realize that there are truly good people out there doing truly good things, and they're achieving all these amazing and wondrous things in different fields.